watched the rise and fall of the Napoleonic Empire in one go. He relied on his own strength to change the course of European history. He rarely suffered defeats in his life. He defeated the anti-French alliances 5 times, making European countries terrified. 1716. Napoleon was born in Corsica, an Italian aristocratic family. Because a few months after Napoleon's birth, Corsica was incorporated into French territory. Napoleon became a French citizen. In 1779, under his father's arrangement, 10-year-old Napoleon entered the Breen Military Academy in France to receive education. 1784. After Napoleon graduated with honors, he was selected to the Paris Military Academy in France to specialize in artillery. In 1785, due to his father's death, Napoleon graduated early and joined the Raphael Legion. He was awarded the rank of second lieutenant of artillery. While stationed in various places with the troops, he immersed himself in various books, including historical works about Alexander, as well as works by many Enlightenment thinkers. The French Revolution broke out in 1789. The uprising quickly swept across the country. During this period, King Louis XVI of France was taken to the guillotine and executed. The French First Republic was established. The French Revolution shocked Europe. The feudal monarchs of various countries were very hostile to the revolution. Therefore, the Holy Roman Empire, the Kingdom of Great Britain, and other countries formed the first coalition against France in an attempt to suppress the revolution. In 1793, Napoleon, on the recommendation of a friend, became part of the Toulon suppression forces in southeastern France. Artillery commander, defeated 4,000 Allied troops in the siege of Toulon. Napoleon, only 24 years old at the time, was promoted to brigadier general. He began to show his talent. In 1794, a coup d'état broke out in France. Napoleon was dismissed from the rank of brigadier general. In 1795, the Parisian armed forces opposed to the new constitution attempted to restore the old dynasty. A rebellion broke out in Paris. Napoleon was appointed to suppress the rebellion. He ordered the soldiers to fire on the crowd, killing 200 rebels. The battle lasted just over an hour, and the rebellion was put down. Napoleon overnight was promoted to brigadier general and commander of the Paris garrison. March 2, 1796, Napoleon, 26 years old, was appointed to the French Republic, commander-in-chief of the Italian army. Before leaving Paris, married his passionate lover, Josephine. April 10, 1796, Napoleon's army against the army of the Kingdom of Sardinia of Italy, and the army of the Holy Roman Empire broke out a war. Napoleon commanded the army to win 6 victories in 15 days, captured 17,000 people, forcing the Kingdom of Sardinia to withdraw from the anti-French alliance. May 10, 1796. With the Kingdom of Sardinia withdrawing from the war, the French army in the northern Italian battlefield had a superior force. Napoleon commanded the French army to force the Po River, launched an attack on the Austrian army. In this battle, Napoleon deployed 30 cannons, continued to bombard the enemy's position. French soldiers were encouraged by Napoleon, shouting, "Long live the Republic!" Fighting with the Austrian army, the French army won again. In August 1796, the Austrian army divided into 3 routes, attempting to encircle and annihilate the French army. In this battle, Napoleon readjusted his forces, deciding to implement the strategy of defeating them one by one. The French army successively defeated the 3 routes of the Austrian army. The Austrian army failed again. After that, the Austrian Empire repeatedly changed generals, but it was to no avail. Napoleon repeatedly defeated the Austrian army, forcing them to sign an armistice treaty favorable to France. The first coalition against France was also declared a failure. After Napoleon won a great victory in northern Italy, his prestige became higher and higher. Napoleon at this time had become a national hero of the French Republic. But his rise made the Parisian Directory feel uneasy. Napoleon was sent to the Middle East to begin an expedition. In May 1798, Napoleon set sail for Egypt. He led a fleet of 400 ships and a team of 35,000 people. The aim of the expedition was to subjugate Egypt and make it serve France. The French army arrived in Egypt and quickly occupied many cities in Egypt, defeating and destroying the Mamluk army, but was defeated by the British army in naval battles. Napoleon's army was trapped in Egypt. November 1798, Great Britain and the Russian Empire, among others, formed the Second Coalition against France. By 1799, the anti-French alliance had gradually formed. The forces in France restoring the old dynasty were also gradually increasing. Napoleon decided to return to France. In August, Napoleon abandoned his troops, avoiding the patrols of the British Royal Navy. It took 2 months. Successfully returned to France. November 9th, Napoleon used the excuse of extremism threatening France to launch a mutiny, sent troops to control the Directory, took over all affairs of the revolutionary government. This coup, in the French legislation of the time, was known as Brumaire, historically known as the Coup of Brumaire. Coup of Brumaire enabled Napoleon to seize military and political power in France. After that, he continuously took military actions, decisively striking at the feudal forces in Europe, against several counterattacks on France. In 1800, Napoleon personally led his army to defeat the Austrian army, and advanced into southern Austria, forcing the Austrian emperor to sign a peace treaty. In 1802, the Second Coalition against France, led by terrorist Russia, was defeated by Napoleon. In the same year, France and Britain, and Amiens, France, signed the Treaty of Amiens. Britain and France temporarily ceased hostilities. The Second Coalition against France was declared a failure. 1803, French ships were detained in British ports. Napoleon quickly sent troops, occupying the British territory of Hanover. December 2, 1804, Napoleon was crowned emperor. The First French Empire was established. After the establishment of the empire, the French Civil Code was passed in Parliament, later renamed the Napoleonic Code. The code stipulates, all citizens are equal before the law, abolishing feudal privileges, freedom from church control, as well as personal and contractual freedoms, and the inviolability of private property, and other basic principles. The Napoleonic Code safeguarded the achievements of the Revolution. It is the first civil code in the modern sense, influencing later Europe and even the world. It had a huge impact, and it's still valid in France. In 1805, France annexed the Ligurian Republic. In the same year, the Kingdom of Great Britain, the Russian Empire, the Kingdom of Naples, the Austrian Empire and other countries formed the Third Coalition against France. September 18, 1805, Napoleon commanded troops stationed in Italy for a secret and rapid march, heavily damaged the Austrian army. More than 30,000 Austrian troops were forced to surrender. December 2, 1805, Napoleon's French army and the Russo-Austrian allied forces broke out in a decisive battle. This battle is a typical battle in the history of war where the few defeated the many. Napoleon sent out 7 marshals. 6 of them commanded their own armies. Napoleon commanded a portion of his forces to fight a mobile war. He voluntarily gave up the high ground. When the French army retreated with equipment, the enemy forces charged down from the high ground in pursuit. As a result, they walked right into an ambush. He precisely seized the battle opportunity, striking at the opportune moment, and swiftly defeated the Russian army with lightning speed, with minimal casualties. They won this battle of outnumbered forces, historically known as the Battle of Austerlitz. This battle fully demonstrated Napoleon's military talent. After this battle, the last emperor of the Holy Roman Empire announced the dissolution of the empire. The Holy Roman Empire then perished. The Third Coalition against France also collapsed. France seized control of continental Europe. In the Central European region, the Confederation of the Rhine, protected by France, was established. And it opened Napoleon, a period of great prosperity that lasted for 6 years. July 1806. Napoleon sent troops to occupy the Kingdom of Naples. September 1806. The British Empire, the Russian Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia, and Sweden formed the Fourth Coalition against France. October 1806. Napoleon commanded the army to defeat more than 50,000 of the main Prussian forces. After this battle, the French army advanced into Berlin, the Prussian capital. The Prussian army was almost completely disintegrated. The French army pointed directly at the Russian border. June 14, 1807. Napoleon defeated the Russian army at Friedland. The Russians are forced to sue for peace. France and Russia, on July 7th, signed the Treaty of Tilsit and formed an alliance. May 1808, Napoleon campaigned in Spain and encountered fierce resistance from the Spanish people. Both sides engaged in fierce street fighting. The French army suffered heavy casualties. Britain joined in aiding Spain and Portugal. The war lasted for 6 years. Total casualties on both sides reached over 500,000. The French army was unable to capture the entirety of Spain and began to face a two-front war. In 1809, Austria, along with Britain and the Kingdom of Sardinia, formed the Fifth Coalition against France. Napoleon led his troops back home to campaign against Austria. On July 3, Napoleon laid 165,000 troops in the Eastern Campaign. The smaller Austrian side was unable to annihilate the French army and was forced to sue for peace. The Fifth Coalition against France collapsed. In 1810 and 1811, the Napoleonic Empire reached its peak. Its ruled territory almost encompassed the entire European continent. June 1812, Napoleon assembled an army to rule all of Europe. He gathered an army of 610,000 soldiers. They divided into 3 routes to fight the Russian army, attempting to quickly destroy the main force of the Russian army. In the early stages of this battle, the Russian army suffered repeated defeats, losing a large amount of territory. But the bravery and die-hard spirit of the Russians caused the French army to pay a heavy price. The 280,000-strong Central French army, led by Napoleon himself, was reduced to only 160,000 men shortly after the start of the war. On September 7, in the Battle of Borodino, the two sides engaged in a bloody battle. Each side suffered more than 30,000 casualties. The commander of the Russian 2nd Army also died in battle. The Russian army was forced to retreat. The French army occupied Moscow. At this time, winter had already arrived. The French army, due to being too deep and having a long supply line, Napoleon ordered a retreat on October 19. During the retreat, the Russian army began to pursue. A large number of French soldiers died on the road. The French army lost all of its cavalry and almost all of its artillery. Only 30,000 people withdrew from the country. Napoleon was almost captured. In this battle, the French army lost 400,000 people. The Russian army lost 210,000 people. The failure of the expedition to Russia became a turning point in the fate of Napoleon and France. After Napoleon suffered a crushing defeat in 1813, the anti-French countries in Europe formed the Sixth Coalition against France. Napoleon quickly built his new army. The French army increased from 30,000 to 130,000. In May 1813, Napoleon commanded the army to defeat the Allied forces. causing heavy casualties to the Allied forces. However, due to the lack of cavalry, the Allied forces were not severely damaged. The anti-French alliance still existed. June 4, 1813. Due to the lack of horses in the French cavalry, Napoleon and the Allied forces signed a ceasefire agreement for more than 2 months. During the armistice, Napoleon heavily criticized the Austrians. Austria soon joined the anti-French alliance to fight against France. This ceasefire agreement proved to be a serious mistake. The benefits gained by the anti-French alliance from the ceasefire agreement far outweighed those of France. August 26, 1813. After the end of the ceasefire agreement, Napoleon, first in the Battle of Dresden, dealt a heavy blow to the Allied forces. He skillfully used the terrain to trap the Allied forces by the flooded river. 13,000 Austrian troops surrendered. But at the same time, the French army also suffered several serious defeats. Prussian troops wiped out more than 10,000 French soldiers, captured 20,000 French soldiers. In the Battle of Waterloo, the French army, without support, deeply pursued the enemy alone. 13,000 people were wiped out. On September 6, Napoleon, in order to drive Prussia out of the war, ordered a full-scale attack on Berlin, the Prussian capital. In this battle, the French army mistakenly fell into an enemy trap and lost more than 30,000 soldiers. On October 19, Napoleon suffered a decisive defeat in the Battle of Leipzig. Napoleon, with 180,000 men, fought against the Russian Empire, the Austrian Empire, the Kingdom of Prussia, and other countries, a total of 300,000 Allied troops. The Allied forces, with more soldiers and generals, fully exploited the advantage of the outer lines and tried to avoid direct battles with Napoleon. The French army was defeated on many fronts, losing nearly 70,000 men. The failure of this battle, marking the last hope of Napoleon's reign over Germany, had been shattered. On March 31, 1814, the Allied forces entered Paris. France and the anti-French countries signed the Treaty of Fontainebleau. Napoleon announced his abdication and was exiled to a small island in the Mediterranean Sea, Elba Island. Louis Vuitton returned to France. The Bourbon dynasty was restored. February 26, 1815, Napoleon, accompanied by 650 guards, returned to France. On the way, many troops and Napoleon's subordinates came to join him. When he returned to Paris, he already had 140,000 regular troops and 200,000 volunteer soldiers. French officers and soldiers warmly welcomed Napoleon's return. Napoleon regained power. Louis Vuitton fled in a hurry. The 100 Days began. Napoleon's return caused panic among European countries. They quickly formed the Seventh Coalition against France. The Allied nations organized more than 700,000 troops to march on France. June 16th, Napoleon, in the Battle of Ligny, defeated the Prussian army. On June 18th, the French army and the anti-French Allied forces, mainly British and Prussian, engaged in the historically famous Battle of Waterloo. In this battle, the French army of 72,000 fought against the Allied army of 117,000. In this battle, the flanking maneuver that had previously allowed Napoleon to win countless battles, the flanking maneuver, due to the Allied forces' defensive formations and the limitations of the battlefield terrain, could not be used effectively. Napoleon committed his best troops, the Imperial Guard, to the battles on both flanks, but failed to break through the Allied defenses. With the Imperial Guard, who had never been driven back on the battlefield, began the retreat. The French army begins a complete collapse. The French army suffered approximately 30,000 casualties in this battle. Thousands were captured. The Allied forces suffered around 20,000 casualties. After the French army's defeat, the 100 Days' reign collapsed. Napoleon abdicated on June 20 to ND. He was exiled to St. Helena Island in the Atlantic Ocean. He died soon after. The First French Empire officially ended.